think this is a nice kind of wrap up that I'm going to do here that touches on a lot of things that everyone else has already talked about, and really kind of a more simple example for those of you that might be a little bit newer to this. So ironically enough, this is another ratio project that we are working on here with Wake County Public Schools. So the process I'm going to show you is we were doing a 60% CD constructability review. Most of it was handled by our pre-construction department, but our VDC team always kind of chips in and does a really kind of basic overall clash detection and issue reporting to assist in the process. So the steps I'm going to talk about today are we're acquiring models, running Clash and Navis. We are creating issues with that really long-winded title of an add-in within Navisworks. And then we're exporting a report at the end to give a deliverable to the design team and the owner. Okay, so step one, I think we're all pretty familiar with this. So Ratio gave us access to their, and I'm using BIM 360 docs, so same as kind of like what Scott said, just put cloud over top of any of this stuff to ease any confusion between what's going on now. So I was able to get their designer models. I just exported out NWCs. I did make an NWD file in Navisworks so that I could use this issue tracking. Had all my models together, and then clash detection. I mean, Gautam kind of touched on this. I'm creating sets for major system comparisons. I think this is also, and anytime like Heather and Gautam were talking about, doing this kind of review at design, you really have to keep in mind at what you're looking at and what stage the design team is to really eliminate a lot of false positives. I also like to use it really as a heat map for kind of a broader review of what's going on. So I ran my Clash and Navis just to get an idea of what was going on within this project. Okay, so the next step, here's where I'm actually using that coordination issues add-in with Navis. So in Navis, I can create an issue really easily. I'm going to show some screenshots of that. But some other keys I did was I did save viewpoints, and I also took screenshots so we had an image to put in that report. So just some additional steps I was doing along the way to get the desired end result. Typically, we would do this just in Navis, make viewpoints, and then use something like Word to create the report. We wanted to try issues in this project, which we are doing a lot more just within the company in general, really moving to the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So this was a way to get our operations and pre-construction teams into the model, and it's a way to see the issues that we're creating. So when I was actually putting together this presentation, I was trying to do another test, and I was like, why can't I create an issue in this other file I created? So a few things, like what you see here on the right, you can only use it for an NWD file you're opening through the desktop connector, or what Scott showed with the model coordination. So keep that in mind. And like Heather mentioned, you also have to have the right permissioning. So same thing, I was like, why can't I create an issue? I didn't have permissions on that test project I was looking at. So very similar to what Scott was showing, in this process that we're doing, we are just dividing clashes in here. We're not really using that. We really divide between constructability and coordination. And that way, as we're working with the design team and the owner, we can say, okay, these are coordination issues that we'll figure out, like we want to identify them now because we can track them as we continue to go out through design and construction. Or this is a constructability issue that we really need to figure out now, like a situation like we're looking at right here. I also put in locations. I was kind of like toying with this. It didn't quite work as I expected, I think, because of how I kind of pulled these models together, but it did give everyone a good idea of where we were talking about. So I create my issue in Navis with that push pin, and then I can see it in the model. And this is the point, where I would take my screenshot in order to have a view of what it's going to look like. I'm also adding in description. So all this information that Scott was kind of touching on in his presentation, just to make sure that everyone knew what we had going on here. So now I'm going to flip. Now I'm in BIM 360 document management, the model web viewer. So I go to my issue, and this is what I see. So this is why I've created these different viewpoints and screenshots, because it doesn't save any of the sectioning or any of the like visibility settings, things that are hidden, transparencies, things like that. But it does actually give all the information. So our project management team was able to come in here and see these issues. Within Navis, similar to what Gautam's doing, in his typical coordination project, I was creating viewpoints for each issue and naming them the same number. So this was just a manual process just to keep it coordinated. It was really easy on this because there weren't a lot of issues we were identifying in this process. I might look at some other ways to do that depending on the scope of what I'm doing, but for this project, it actually worked out pretty good. Like I said, I'm then creating a screenshot and I am using the attachment feature. So here I am back in the web interface. You can see my list of issues back here. I can create attachments and I can drag and drop different file types into here. That way, when I'm producing my report, I have that image of what the actual issue looks like with everything hidden and all my visibility settings and all that good stuff. When I'm in this model viewer and I'm in my sheets and views, here I can see if I go to my issue viewpoint, it takes us right to the viewpoint. I think maybe Heather mentioned this, that I think overall the navigation in the 360 viewer is pretty easy, but because you can't save a view, sometimes it's hard for someone who's coming into a big model like this to just get started at a specific point. So by having these viewpoints, it just gives someone like a starting point to move forward, especially when I'm talking about a specific issue, they can see it a little bit more clearly. Once we got all that done, then we had to run a report. So there are two different types of reports, which I found out, an issue summary report and an issue detail report. While I was actually working on this, we happened to have an internal VDC meeting. So prior to that meeting, I got in here. Here I am in document management. I go up to my export button and I exported a report. And this is what I got. And I was like, well, it gives me the title and the description, but I really want images. And so I think actually Matt Rachers in this meeting today, he was the one who mentioned there's another way to do a report and it gives you all that other information. I wanted to mention this because it's really kind of hidden. So you actually have to go to the Insight tab, not Document Management, and then down on the bottom left, you see Reports. I never would have found this had someone not actually told me about it. Once I get in there, I then can create a report. Here I'm going to have a list of all my reports. And here's where I can choose between issue detail and issue summary. So I chose my issue detail. I can run that. I have all these filtering options. I know Scott was talking about all this different information that we can put in. I can do that here. I can run the report. I'll get an email when it's done. And then at the end, I get this nice PDF. It still has more information than I'd want in there because I'm not filling out all this information, but for the most part, it was perfect for what I needed. A hyperlink table of contents has my attachment screenshot in there, a link to the model, the description, everything that was needed. So all we did was we just sent this PDF as an attachment to the larger kind of report that our pre-construction team is doing. So just some kind of takeaways from this particular process. It was a really easy integration into an existing workflow. Like the morning I started on this and I was kind of crunched for time, I was like, well, let me give this a shot, and it worked out great. It really expanded the use of our model within our internal project teams, which is kind of a goal of our department within really everything we do. But this is a good way to get the project managers in there. That, like I said, the reporting feature was super easy. The two issues that I had was creating those viewpoints. Obviously was a manual process. It would be cool if there was a way to keep that sectioning and view overrides when you're creating the issue. We've been talking with Autodesk about this. And because I had exported NWCs from Revit models and made an NWD, then the issues weren't linked to any sheets because the sheets don't exist in that NWD file. So that was something else I wanted to think about in the future, was how could I possibly do this so that we can still get the issues in the model, but then also on a sheet, which would be even more critical if we're talking about like more issues than just the limited number that we were going through here. But all in all, it was a really good experience. And like I said, I think this is pretty good example of some low hanging fruit, is just a way to kind of like get started with this process.